About 3 years ago, back in 2022, I made a video going over what I thought was the worst LEGO Star Wars set released every year, and that has actually ended up being the most viewed video on my channel. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of have mixed feelings on that because it's definitely one of the lower quality videos I've made, as it was way back when I was just starting my channel, but that's beside the point. Today, I'm redoing it. One, because it's outdated. I mean, obviously, I released it 3 years ago, and two, because a lot of my opinions on all these sets have changed since then, meaning that this list is gonna be quite a bit different. So without further ado, this is my 2025 version of the worst LEGO Star Wars set released every year from 1999 all the way to current day 2025. And unlike that first video, for this one, I've actually kind of set a list of rules for myself. I couldn't choose buildable characters, Technic buildable characters, 4+ sets, GWPs, or any sets like Microfighters, Mechs, and Planet sets, because for a lot of years, those would obviously just be easy cop-out answers. Like, obviously, the worst set that released last year in 2024 was a 4+ set, because nobody cares about them. And the worst set in like 2017 would be a random buildable character, because nobody cares about them. So to make this video more interesting, I have just completely excluded sets like that. And starting off all the way back in 1999, I have 7121 Naboo Swamp. And this necessarily isn't a downright terrible set. I mean, I feel like you can't really say that about any set that released in 1999, because after all, it was the first year of the theme. However, the reason I chose it is just because it's the weakest of the bunch compared to the other sets that released this year. And you're going to notice throughout this video that that's kind of going to be a common theme, that just because I pick a set as the quote-unquote worst set of the year does not mean it's a bad set. It just means it's weaker compared to the rest of the sets that released that year. So I'd say definitely keep that in mind as we go throughout this video. But back to this Naboo Swamp set, I think the concept is fun with 2 battle droids and 2 stabs, as well as Qui-Gon and Jar Jar, but the build is pretty much nothing. It's just a plate with a few bricks on it. You can't really do much with it. There's not much playability. It's kind of like an extremely early precursor to dioramas, because you literally can't really do much with this set besides display it, which is the main reason I chose it. Because of that, it's just weaker compared to the rest of the sets that released this year that were mainly vehicles and stuff you could actually do stuff with. This, on the other hand, is really just a plate and a few bricks. Anyways, though, moving on to 2000, there were only about 19 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one, or the weakest one, is 7144 Slave 1. And I'm pretty sure this would be an obvious choice for this year for most people. This set is widely regarded to be not the greatest. I mean, as you can see, it's not the most appealing model. It hardly resembles the Slave 1, and as much of a classic set as it is, I just think compared to other sets that released this year, and just to LEGO's capability of making sets like this back in 2000, it is pretty lackluster. Next up, we have 2001, and there were only 10 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the weakest one was 7127 Imperial ATSD. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of have a soft spot for this set just because of nostalgic reasons. It's always just been very interesting to me how it's a very small model and only includes Chewbacca as the minifigure. No Stormtrooper, no ATSD driver, nothing like that, just Chewbacca. For some reason, I've always just thought of that as like a funny quirk that this set has. However, when you look at the set for what it actually is, it is pretty weak. I mean, it's clearly not the most appealing ATSD LEGO has made, and I think even for 2001, they could have done better. They could have made the head a bit wider. They could have made the legs just better built. I mean, look at them. They don't look that great. So again, I kind of have a soft spot for this set, but at the end of the day, it is pretty rough, even for 2001. Moving on to 2002, there were a total of 24 separate sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was easily 7201 Final Duel 2. And it's kind of the same scenario as with Naboo Swamp, meaning the build just isn't much, as you can see. It's literally just a small handful of pieces that's supposed to represent some type of bridge that Luke walks on when he gets captured, but it hardly even represents anything, and obviously you can't play with it or display it very well, meaning that really the main highlight of this set is just the 3 minifigures. Anyways though, moving on to 2003, there were a total of 21 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the weakest one was 4476 Jabba's Prize. And this is another case where the set necessarily isn't bad, it's just kind of weaker compared to the rest of the sets that released this year. I do have to say the Gamorrean Guard is cool, and obviously so is Boba Fett, but as you can see, the build really isn't much. It's just a platform holding Han Solo, Frozen, and Carbonite, which again just puts it on the weaker end compared to other 2003 sets. Moving on to 2004, there were only 15 sets released this year. However, for the most part, this was actually a very good and consistent year. However, for the sake of this video, I still had to pick a set that I think is the weakest, so I'm going with 7262 TIE Fighter and Y-Wing. And the reason is just because by 2004, I think LEGO had been dragging this set out a bit too long. If you don't know what I mean by that, LEGO released 3 different kind of remastered versions of this set. The first one in 1999, the second one in 2002, and the third one being this one in 2004. And that's the reason I chose it for this year, because I think at this point, it was time for a new version of both of these models. It's still a really good set, don't get me wrong, but at this point, it had been on shelves for 5 years, and I think LEGO remaking it a third time was just dragging it out a little bit too far. And instead, I think they should have just made a new Y-Wing and a new TIE Advanced. Moving on to 2005, there were 26 separate sets released this year, and the one at the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion, was 7251 Darth Vader Transformation. And yeah, here I am talking about this set in a negative connotation again. If you don't know, a few weeks ago I actually made a video ranking every Revenge of the Sith set, and I actually put this set at the very back of the list, and now here it is again on this list. But I mean, just compared to the other 2005 sets, especially the other 2005 Episode 3 sets, it's just super lackluster. It's just an extremely simple build that just barely represents the scene of Darth Vader's transformation. I do say I like the spinning feature where you can spin Anakin around to reveal Darth Vader, and it was nice to get Darth Vader in general in a cheap set. But again, man, just compared to the other 2005 sets, this set is just not a whole lot. Moving on to 2006, there were 14 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the weakest one was 6207 A-Wing Fighter. And like most other sets so far on this list, this is the exact same scenario. It's a really solid set, it's just weak compared to the other stuff that came out that year. Because overall, 2006 was a very solid year for LEGO Star Wars, and I had to pick a set for this video, so I'm going with this A-Wing. And 2007 is the exact same scenario. There were 17 sets released this year, and I ended up going with 7663 Sith Infiltrator. And I'd even argue that this is one of, if not the best set in this entire video, but it's simply just at the bottom of the totem pole compared to other 2007 sets. However, there is one critique I do have with it, and that's that I wish it included more minifigures. For $30, it only included Darth Maul, and I wish it had Qui-Gon Jinn and maybe a few others. But other than that, solid set, just lackluster for 2007 standards. Moving on to 2008, there were 21 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was 7681 Separatist Spider Droid. And really, the only redeeming factor about this set is the Commander Fox minifigure. I think the actual build itself is pretty rough. For this being their first attempt at the homing Spider Droid, I think they did a decent job on the actual head area, like the sphere in the middle, but unfortunately, the build as a whole is just very fragile. It falls over easily, pieces break off easily, like the main cannon on the bottom. I mean, overall, it's just not a very pleasant build to handle or do anything with because it's fragile. Again, I think Commander Fox looks good, and I think for this being their first attempt at the homing Spider Droid, they got the look down right. However, unfortunately, it's just not as structurally sound as it needs to be. Moving on to 2009, there were a total of 36 separate sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was 8015 Assassin Droids Battle Pack. And I'm gonna be honest, the pure existence of this set has always just been kind of strange to me. It was released alongside the famous Clone Walker Battle Pack and was supposed to be its counterpart. However, it just doesn't really fit that at all because it's an Assassin Droid Battle Pack and not just a normal Battle Droid Battle Pack. And to this day, I've always kind of questioned that decision. Why didn't LEGO just make another Battle Droid Battle Pack instead of this? Because this was just strange. It doesn't really fit in with the rest of the Clone Wars sets from that year. And also, I don't think anyone was really wanting to build an army of Assassin Droids over Battle Droids. Although one good thing I do gotta say about this set is that I think the speeder is pretty cool. Up next, we have 2010, and there were a total of 32 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one or the weakest one was 8084 Snow Trooper Battle Pack. And like many other sets on this list, I don't think this is a bad set, it's just weak compared to the other sets from this year. I honestly don't think the idea of a Snow Trooper Battle Pack was executed in the best way possible here, mainly just because I think it was kind of random to include the AT-AT driver. That could have just been a third Snow Trooper because he doesn't really fit in this set. And also, I think the little Imperial command station, whatever you want to call it, build could have been a little bit better. But other than those things, this is a solid set. Moving on to 2011, there were 32 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was 7957 Sith Night Speeder. And I know this might be a bit of a hot take because as of now, and probably for the foreseeable future, this is the only set ever made to include Savage Opress, which is really cool. He's a cool figure and really the main highlight of this set. However, the reason I chose it is just because I think the speeder build is so ugly, and that's really nothing on LEGO's end. I mean, they captured the source material pretty well here. It's just this speeder in Star Wars is not the most appealing looking speeder, and then obviously that didn't translate well over to LEGO. So again, figures are cool, especially Savage Opress, but man, that speeder has just never been appealing to me. Moving on to 2012, there were 38 sets released this year, and the one I ended up going with is 9489 Indoor Rebel Trooper and Imperial Trooper Battle Pack. And for the millionth time, this is another set that there's really not much wrong with. I just had to pick a set for this year for this video, and this is the one I ended up going with. I mean, I genuinely have no critiques with this set. It's a really solid versus battle pack. I mean, I do think the tree could maybe be a bit better. It does look kind of ugly, but other than that, it's a solid set. Moving on to 2013, there were a total of 44 sets released this year, and I'm probably gonna get some hate for this, but the one I ended up going with is 75018 Jag 14's Stealth Starfighter. And I'm just gonna straight up admit that the main reason I chose this set is just because I've always kind of just had a bias against it. I've never understood the appeal for the Yoda Chronicles sets. I mean, I just think this one right here looks tacky, the minifigures look tacky, the characters aren't interesting to me, and I'm well aware that this is kind of hypocritical because the Rebuild the Galaxy sets are also very tacky, and I like those sets, but I don't like this one. But again, like I said, I mean, I'm just admitting that it's kind of just a biased against it. I've never understood the appeal. Flame me and disagree with me all you want in the comments for this one. Moving on to 2014, there were a total of 45 sets released this year, and as many of you guys know, I consider this to be the best year of LEGO Star Wars to date, but that doesn't mean it was a perfect year though, because there are a few duds, and the one I ended up going with is 75048, The Phantom. And the main reason is because I don't think this should have been a standalone set. I think it should have released with the Ghost that released that same year, because as you guys know, these two sets combine with each other. The Phantom sits on the back of that Ghost, and also it would have raised the price of that set by only about $20, so I don't think that would have been that bad. But instead they released it as a separate set, and I think this $25 spot could have been used for something else, maybe a better Starfighter or something. And also I'm just not a big fan of this version of the Phantom itself. I just don't like its design, and I really don't like that big spring-loaded shooter placed right on the top right there. I think that could have been incorporated a lot better. Anyways though, moving on to 2015, there were 69 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was tragically 75104 Kylo Ren's Command Shuttle. As most of you guys know, this set is extremely inaccurate. It's all gray when it should be all black, and also its wings cannot fold open, which was literally the main feature of Kylo Ren's Command Shuttle. When the set is in quote-unquote flight mode, its wings just stick straight up and it looks kind of awkward. However, none of these inaccuracies are actually LEGO's fault. They're mainly Disney's fault because they had LEGO design this set strictly off of concept art, and the final design of the ship in the concept art that LEGO used for this set did not end up being the final design of the ship in the movies. So it just led to this extremely inaccurate set. Disney kind of did LEGO wrong here. Moving on to 2016, there were 66 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one easily was 75132 First Order Battle Pack. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people actually consider this to be the worst battle pack ever made, and I could definitely get behind that, and the reason I don't like it is just because I've never understood why every single minifigure in this set is different, because it just completely removed the idea of army building with this set, and the figures they did include are not good enough to do that with. I mean, they're not special or unique or cool or anything, they're just average First Order troopers that LEGO already had in different sets, and they kind of just threw them all into this set, when in my opinion, it should have just been 3 Stormtroopers and the First Order Heavy Stormtrooper. But instead, they kind of just grabbed the most mediocre First Order minifigures that they had already made before and just threw them into one set, and it doesn't really have any significance at all. Although I do have to say, I do kind of like the cannon build. Anyways though, moving on to 2017, there were 66 sets released this year, and I ended up going with 75186 the Arrowhead. And most of you guys have probably either forgotten about this set or just never even seen it before, and that's because it's from a pretty forgotten LEGO original content show, that being the Freemaker Adventures, and I'm pretty sure it was like the lead ship in that show or whatever. But the reason I chose it is just because it's not the most appealing build, and also it just doesn't really fit in with other LEGO Star Wars sets or even Star Wars ships in general. It's really just kind of an awkward outlier, and I think that alone has kind of just caused people to forget about this set or just have never seen it before. Moving on to 2018, there were 72 sets released this year, and this one is a no-brainer. Obviously the worst one was 75201 First Order ATST. As many of you guys know, this is widely considered to be one of, if not the worst LEGO Star Wars set of all time, so much so to the point where it's pretty much become a meme within the community, and the reason is because it's literally just an incomplete ATST. It doesn't have its head, and to this day, I'll just never understand that decision. Obviously, they wanted to recreate the scene where BB-8 rides the headless First Order ATST, but releasing an actual headless ATST as a complete set is just really ridiculous. They should have just had the full ATST model with some type of feature where the head could pop off, and then the scene could be recreated from there. But no, they literally released just a pair of legs pretty much. Up next, we have 2019, and there were a total of 64 sets released this year, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but in my opinion, the worst one was 75236 Duel on Starkiller Base, and the reason is just because this set simply didn't include enough. For a duel set, I feel like there just should have been more terrain, more features, just a bigger set in general, and not only was what we got not enough, it definitely was not enough for $20. In my opinion, this looks like more of a $15 set, maybe $20 is pushing it, but all in all, there should have just been more. There should have been more at this set, and I've never liked how it just feels pretty incomplete. Anyways though, next up we have 2020, and there were only 47 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was 75284 Knights of Ren Transport Ship. And the main reason is because LEGO made the stupid decision to not include all of the Knights of Ren in this set. Instead, they only included 2 of them in this set, and the others they just spread out among a bunch of other Episode 9 sets from 2019 and 2020, which looking back was just a scummy decision because it meant that to complete the Knights of Ren, you had to buy all those other sets too, when in reality, they all should should have just been in this one right here. And I have just always looked down upon that. I think the build is cool. It looks cool on the exterior at least. It doesn't have much of an interior, which is disappointing. But the main problem to me at least is just the fact that it does not include the entirety of Knights of Ren. Moving on to 2021, there were 38 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was another duel set, that being 75310 Duel on Mandalore. And this set pretty much has all the exact same problems as the Starkiller base duel that I just talked about, except kind of even worse. For what that set was, it actually looked decent. This set, on the other hand, doesn't look very good because it literally isn't really anything. It's just Darth Maul's throne on Mandalore, but it's a very, very weak build in my opinion, and there's pretty much no play features at all. I mean, you can't even do anything with this build. The only redeeming quality is literally just the minifigures, which do look really good, but the build is super weak. And for $20, this was just insane. This should have been like a $10 set. Anyways, though, moving on to 2022, there were 42 sets released this year, and in my opinion, the worst one was actually a helmet set, that being 75343 Dark Trooper helmet. And when this set released back in 2022, it was a bit controversial because this is actually just a droid head. It's not an actual helmet like the other helmet sets, it's just the head of a droid. And it was controversial because prior to this set's release, LEGO claimed that they weren't going to do droid heads for these helmet sets, and then they just completely went against that and made this. However, that's not even the reason I picked it. The reason I picked it is just because I don't like how this set looks. The main thing is just the overwhelming amount of studs on the head area. There's just such a stark contrast from the top of the head to the bottom half with the chin and the face and everything, because the bottom half is all smooth and everything, and then the top half is just straight studs. And it just makes such a contrast that I don't like. I don't like how it looks. And also, not to mention, there are a few fragile areas on this set. The pieces around the chin do tend to fall off pretty easily. Moving on to 2023, there were 48 sets that released this year, and this one was a bit of a hard one, but I ended up going with 75359 332nd Ahsoka's Clone Troopers Battle Pack. And this is yet another set that isn't downright terrible. I just don't really like it compared to the rest of the sets that released in its year. And the main reason is because of the Clone Troopers. And no, it's not just because of the helmet holes. While I do think those look ugly, it's just because I don't really like the 332nd Troopers in general. I think the orange and blue colorway just isn't very appealing, and I've never liked how it looks from an aesthetic standpoint. The Swamp Speeder, on the other hand, is actually really cool though. I love how it looks, but it's just the Clone Troopers that have always kind of turned me away from this set. Anyways, though, next up we have 2024, one of the most eventful years of LEGO Star Wars so far, and there were a total of 56 sets released this year, and the worst one in my opinion is a no-brainer, that being 75392 Creative Play Droid Builder. And this is a set that I guarantee most of you guys forgot released last year because nobody was buying this thing. I mean, I don't know a single person that actually bought this set, and I mean, it makes sense. There's just no good reason for this set's existence. We already have so many buildable droids and buildable characters, and then for some reason LEGO thought it would be a good idea to make downsized buildable droids and put them all in one set for $100. It was just kind of ridiculous, and not to mention they don't even look that great. And to this day, the fact that this set took up a $100 slot, which could have been put towards a way better set, is just really crazy to me. Anyways though, and now finally making our way to current day 2025, LEGO has released 50 sets this year, and as many of you guys know, a lot of them have not been the greatest. However, the one I ended up going with is actually 75406 Kylo Ren's Command Shuttle. And if you watched my review on this set back in May, you know there are a lot of things I don't like about it. I mean, compared to all the other midi-scale and Starship Collection sets, it is way at the bottom of the barrel. First of all, it's overpriced at $70. It should not be anywhere near $70. I'd say this is about a $50 set at most. Second of all, the front of the middle cockpit area looks awful. They did not get the shaping down right at all. The front area where you see that little red window right there is way too thin. It should be a lot wider. And also the wings are held open so terribly because they're just held on by hinges and nothing else, which means that oftentimes they'll just open up and fall down under their own weight pretty easily, and I've just always found that super annoying. And also when you leave the wings in their open position for a significant amount of time, they do start to sag a little bit. So yeah, in my opinion at least, this set overall is just a dumpster fire, and I know it's not the set that most of you guys were expecting me to pick for this year. However, I really do think it's the worst, and it shows because not a lot of people are buying this, and it's quickly becoming a very overlooked set. Anyways though, that is gonna do it for this video. Let me know what you think about my picks down in the comments below. If you agree or if you disagree, say whatever you want. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out more videos, you can see on the screen right now.